The sky itself seemed to burn. Above the endless sea, three colossal pillars pierced the heavens, their surfaces rippling with fire and wind, as though the world's very breath had been bound and twisted into chains. If you enjoy my way of explaining and storytelling, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really motivates me to keep creating. You may not be aware of this, Senior the hook-nosed man began, his voice trembling despite his effort to remain composed. But Coalition Leader 1 has erected 108 Windfire copper pillars. With the aid of several formidable formation masters, he has established a heavenly Windfire formation encompassing the entire island upon which Heavenly Star City stands. Drawing upon the boundless forces of wind and flame, the formation is now assailing the Star Palace. So long as the Coalition's cultivators can defend those pillars, the whole of Heavenly Star City will remain sealed, trapped beyond escape. He knew full well the price he would pay for revealing such secrets. The Coalition would not forgive this betrayal. Yet the icy, merciless gaze Han Li had fixed upon him shattered what little resolve he possessed. Terror overwhelmed reason, and the truth spilled from his lips before he could restrain it. The moment the words left his mouth, regret struck him like a blade. Still, he tried to console himself. This information was not truly confidential. Even a core formation cultivator like himself had known of it. Surely it was no great secret. Clinging to that thought, he felt a faint, fragile sense of relief. A heavenly Windfire formation. Han Li murmured, a subtle flicker stirring in his otherwise calm demeanor. Though he had never studied the formation in depth, he had encountered its name many times within ancient tomes. It was said that in ages long past, a grand restriction formation existed, one capable of harnessing the primal forces of wind and fire that permeated the world itself. Its scale was immense, its power legendary. If the Starfall Coalition had truly succeeded in reconstructing such a formation, then encircling Heavenly Star City was no empty boast. With Wan Tianming personally guarding the formation core, even if several Windfire pillars were destroyed, they could be swiftly restored. As long as the core endured, the formation itself could never truly be broken. A contemplative shadow passed through Han Li's eyes. Around him, tension thickened the air. It radiated from the Starfall Coalition cultivators in waves so dense they were almost tangible. Even the dullest among them could see it. Han Li had come as reinforcement for the Star Palace, and that meant death might soon follow. In stark contrast, the three Whitewater Sword Sect cultivators, ensnared within the azure net, were overjoyed. The elderly man shouted hoarsely, "Ignore! We came to support the Star Palace. Those men belong to the Starfall Coalition's Enforcement Division. They have slaughtered countless cultivators loyal to the Star Palace. Their crimes are unforgivable. Please do not let them escape." At his words, the Coalition cultivators' faces drained of all color. Two of them, positioned farthest from Han Li, exchanged a single glance. In unison, they flipped their hands, producing small yellow flags. Without hesitation, they cast them skyward. The flags dissolved into swirling yellow clouds that enveloped their bodies. In the blink of an eye, both clouds vanished. A heartbeat later, they reappeared over 200 feet away, only to flicker and disappear once more. Teleportation. Han Li's pupils shrank slightly, a trace of surprise surfacing. Then a cold chuckle escaped him. He raised a hand casually, making a grasping motion toward the azure net. At that instant, the two cultivators maintaining the net felt as though a thunderclap had detonated within their minds. Their vision spun, dizziness overwhelming them. Control slipped from their grasp. The all-encompassing net collapsed into a sphere of azure light, freeing the trapped cultivators before flying straight into Han Li's hand. Ignoring the profuse thanks of those he had rescued, Han Li's back flared with white and azure radiance. A pair of wings unfurled, shimmering with ethereal brilliance. With a single gentle beat, he vanished into the wind, clearly in pursuit of the fleeing pair. The remaining Coalition cultivators were stunned, yet also relieved. They exchanged hurried glances before scattering in all directions. Han Li was no opponent to gamble against. None dared trust in mercy. But the three Whitewater Sword Sect cultivators would not let their enemies escape so easily. With furious roars, they too gave chase. Far in the distance, two dull thuds echoed through the sky. White light flashed. The two yellow clouds recoiled violently, as though struck by an invisible force of immense power. A breeze whispered through the air, and Han Li appeared as if conjured from nothingness. A faint mocking smile curved his lips as he regarded the clouds. A third eye, pitch black and ominous, opened briefly upon his glabella, then vanished in a flicker of darkness. The yellow clouds dispersed, revealing the two cultivators within. Their robes were stained with blood, their faces as pale as death. Shock and terror twisted their features. These yellow sand Buddhist flags had saved them before even from nascent soul cultivators. Their confidence in these treasures had been absolute. Otherwise, they would never have dared flee in Han Li's presence. But now that confidence lay shattered, Han Li had needed only two casual punches to crush their escape. Only then did they understand the young man before them was far more terrifying than they had imagined. Yet surrender was not an option. Grinding their teeth, they spat out mouthfuls of blood essence into the clouds. The yellow mist churned violently, turning a deep, ominous crimson. Together they began chanting desperate, preparing their final gambit. A cold gleam ignited in Han Li's eyes. He opened his mouth. Two streaks of piercing yellow light shot forth, arriving before the crimson clouds in an instant. Piercing through them without resistance, agonized screams rang out. The two cultivators plummeted toward the sea below. Han Li merely raised a finger. Golden swords materialized from the void circling their falling forms. Brilliant golden light erupted, then a rain of blood followed. He had not even allowed them the chance to complete their final technique. With a casual wave, the crimson clouds reverted to their original yellow hue and drifted toward him. A pair of incantation seals sank into them, and they transformed once more into flags disappearing into his sleeve. Useful treasures for others at least. After recalling his swords, Han Li turned his gaze toward the distant fugitives. They had already fled over 1,000 feet. The fastest among them had dwindled to a mere black speck. Han Li sighed faintly. With a flick of his wrist, he released a spirit beast pouch. A deafening buzz erupted as a swarm of golden beetles poured forth, splitting into 5 streams that shot away like lightning. Moments later, all vanished into the horizon. Not long after, golden flashes returned from every direction. Behind them followed the 3 Whitewater Sword Sect cultivators' faces, pale eyes haunted. They had witnessed something horrific. The beetles devouring living flesh. Even seasoned cultivators could not remain unmoved. Han Li simply recalled the swarm indifferent. After expressing their gratitude, the 3 cultivators were dismissed with cold pragmatism. "You would only slow me down," Han Li said calmly. "Return." They could not argue. With bitter smiles they departed. Han Li watched them go, then turned toward Heavenly Star City. As he advanced, he passed hidden groups of coalition cultivators lurking beneath rocks, beneath waves. None sensed his presence. They had brushed against death and never knew it. At last, within 50 kilometers of the city, he saw it. A vast veil of azure and crimson light draped over the island like a living storm. Thunder rumbled within. The heavenly Windfire formation. Han Li narrowed his eyes. With a series of seals, his presence vanished entirely. Then, like a silent shadow, he drifted closer. And what he saw next? Countless spirit boats stretched across the sea like a dark constellation fallen upon the waters. Some rose like grand pavilions intricately carved. Others were crude and small. Jade, spiritual wood, black iron, each vessel gleamed beneath the sun. An army, a siege, and at its heart, Heavenly Star City imprisoned within fire and wind. "You are likely unaware of this, Senior." The hook-nosed man said, his voice tight with unease. "But Coalition Leader Wan has erected 108 Windfire copper pillars. He then gathered several powerful formation masters to establish a heavenly Windfire formation around the island upon which Heavenly Star City stands. Drawing upon the boundless forces of wind and flame, he is using it to assault the Star Palace. As long as the Coalition's cultivators can hold those 108 pillars, the entirety of Heavenly Star City will remain trapped, sealed beyond escape. He knew the consequences of such words. Revealing this secret would not go unpunished by the Coalition. Yet the icy piercing glare Han Li had fixed upon him shattered his composure. Fear surged through him like a rising tide, and before he could restrain himself, the truth spilled out. The instant the words left his lips, regret gnawed at him. Still, he tried to steady his thoughts. This information was not truly a closely guarded secret. Even a core formation cultivator like himself was privy to it. Clinging to that reasoning, he felt a faint, uneasy relief. A heavenly Windfire formation. Han Li murmured, a subtle ripple passing through his calm demeanor. Though he had never studied the formation in depth, its name was far from unfamiliar. Many ancient formation tomes he had read spoke of it time and again. In antiquity, it was said, there existed a grand restriction formation capable of drawing upon the primal forces of wind and fire that permeated the world itself. Its scale was vast, its might legendary. If the Starfall Coalition had truly succeeded in reconstructing such a formation, then encircling Heavenly Star City was no empty claim. After all, with Wan Tianming personally guarding the formation core, even if several Windfire pillars were destroyed, they could be swiftly restored. As long as the core remained intact, the formation itself could never be truly broken. A contemplative look flickered across Han Li's face. Around him, tension thickened the air. It rolled off the Starfall Coalition cultivators in heavy, almost tangible waves. Even the dullest among them could tell Han Li had come to reinforce the Star Palace, and that meant they stood on the edge of a perilous abyss. In stark contrast, the three Whitewater Sword Sect cultivators ensnared within the azure net were overjoyed. The elderly man shouted urgently, his voice hoarse with desperation, "Senior, we came here to support the Star Palace. Those people are all from the Starfall Coalition's Enforcement Division. They have slaughtered countless cultivators, loyal to the Star Palace. Their crimes are unforgivable. They deserve death 1,000 times over. Please do not let them escape." At his words, the Coalition cultivators' faces turned deathly pale. The two standing farthest from Han Li exchanged a fleeting glance. In perfect unison, they flipped their hands, each producing a small yellow flag. Without hesitation, they cast the flags into the air. The moment they left their grasp, the flags transformed into swirling yellow clouds that enveloped their bodies. In the blink of an eye, both clouds vanished. A heartbeat later, they reappeared more than 200 feet away, only to flicker and disappear once again. Teleportation. Han Li's pupils contracted slightly, a trace of surprise surfacing. Then a cold chuckle escaped him. He raised a hand casually, making a grasping motion toward the azure net. At that instant, the two cultivators controlling the net felt as though a thunderous explosion had detonated within their minds. Their vision spun, dizziness crashing over them. Control slipped from their grasp. The all-encompassing net collapsed into a sphere of azure light, freeing the trapped cultivators before flying straight into Han Li's hand. Ignoring the words of gratitude from the three he had rescued, Han Li's back flared with white and azure light. A pair of radiant wings unfurled behind him. With a gentle beat, he vanished into a gust of wind, already in pursuit of the fleeing pair. The remaining Coalition cultivators were stunned, yet also inwardly relieved. They exchanged hurried glances before scattering in all directions. Han Li was far too terrifying an opponent. None dared gamble their lives on the faint hope of mercy. But the three Whitewater Sword Sect cultivators were unwilling to let their enemies escape. With furious roars, they too gave chase. In the distance, two muffled thuds echoed through the air. A flash of white light followed. The two yellow clouds recoiled violently as though struck by an invisible force of immense power. A breeze stirred, and Han Li appeared as if conjured from nothingness. A cold, mocking sneer curved his lips as he regarded the clouds. A third eye, inky black and ominous, briefly opened upon his glabella, then vanished in a flicker of dark light. The clouds dispersed, revealing the two cultivators within. Their robes were stained with blood, their faces pale as death. Shock and terror filled their eyes. These yellow sand Buddhist flags had once been their greatest assurance. With them they had escaped even from nascent soul cultivators. Their confidence had been absolute. Otherwise, they would never have dared flee after witnessing Han Li's overwhelming might. But now that confidence lay in ruins, Han Li had needed only 2 casual punches to shatter their escape. Only then did they realize the young man before them was far more terrifying than they had imagined. Yet surrender was not an option. Grinding their teeth, they spat out mouthfuls of blood essence into the clouds. The yellow mist churned violently, turning a deep crimson. Their voices rose in unison as they began chanting, preparing their final desperate technique. A cold gleam flashed in Han Li's eyes. He opened his mouth. 2 streaks of piercing yellow light shot forth, arriving before the crimson clouds in an instant, piercing through them without resistance. Agonized cries rang out. The 2 cultivators plummeted toward the sea below. Han Li merely raised a finger. 2 small golden swords materialized from thin air, circling their falling bodies. Brilliant golden light erupted, and in the next moment a rain of blood descended from above. He had not even allowed them the chance to complete their final technique. With a casual wave, the crimson clouds reverted to their original yellow hue and drifted toward him. A pair of incantation seals sank into them, and they transformed once more into flags before disappearing into his sleeve. These ancient treasures were useful, if not to him, then certainly to his disciples. After recalling his flying swords, Han Li turned his gaze toward the remaining fleeing cultivators. They had already fled over 1,000 feet. The fastest among them had dwindled to a mere black speck in the distance. Han Li let out a faint sigh. With a flick of his wrist, he released a spirit beast pouch. A loud buzzing filled the air as a swarm of golden beetles poured forth, splitting into 5 smaller swarms at his command. Like streaks of lightning, they shot off in different directions. Meanwhile, Han Li flipped his palm, and the 2 yellow flags reappeared for his inspection. In the blink of an eye, both the beetles and the fleeing cultivators vanished into the distance. Not long after, golden light flashed again as the swarms returned from all directions. Behind them followed the 3 Whitewater Sword sect cultivators, their faces pale and shaken. They had seen it. The gold-devouring beetles consuming living flesh. Even seasoned cultivators could not remain unmoved by such a gruesome sight. Han Li calmly recalled the beetles. The elderly man stepped forward respectfully. "Thank you for saving our lives, Senior. Without your intervention, the 3 of us would have surely perished." "There is no need," Han Li replied coolly. "I only intervened because I happened to pass by. Now that Heavenly Star City is surrounded, you would not even be able to reach the island with your current cultivation. Return. I have no interest in dragging useless burdens while I break through the heavenly Windfire formation." The 3 exchanged wry smiles, knowing his words were true. After offering further thanks, they departed the way they had come. Han Li watched them leave, eyes slightly narrowed, before turning toward Heavenly Star City. For him, a journey spanning tens of thousands of feet was trivial. Along the way, he noticed several groups of Starfall Coalition cultivators hidden beneath rocks or lurking beneath the ocean's surface. Though none were as powerful as the first group he had encountered, each still contained 2 or 3 high-grade cultivators clearly stationed to intercept any who attempted to escape. The city. Han Li paid them no mind. He transformed into a faint azure shadow, gliding silently through the air above them. None realized they had brushed so close to death. When he came within just over 50 kilometers of Heavenly Star City, flashes of red light appeared in the distance. Drawing closer, he saw it clearly. The entire island was shrouded beneath a vast veil of azure and crimson light. From within, faint rumblings echoed like distant thunder. Han Li raised an eyebrow. With a series of hand seals, the faint azure streak he had become vanished completely from sight. At the same time, he slowed, approaching with deliberate caution. After traveling several dozen kilometers more, the full scene finally unfolded before him. Far out across the ocean, countless black specks dotted the waters. Upon closer inspection, They resolved into spirit boats of every imaginable design. Some rose like grand pavilions, adorned with intricate carvings. Others were crude and simple, no more than 20 feet long. Their materials varied just as widely: light green spiritual wood, flawless jade, and even pitch-black iron vessels that gleamed coldly beneath the sun. An army had gathered, and at its center, Heavenly Star City lay imprisoned beneath wind and fire. These spirit boats were arranged in a vast encirclement around 3 gargantuan pillars that soared over 1,000 feet into the heavens. Each pillar was a deep, unbroken yellow, its surface rippling with currents of azure and crimson light that flowed like living water. Those streams surged upward without cease, feeding into the immense veil of light that shrouded the entire island. Han Li recognized them at once. These were none other than the legendary Windfire pillars. The cultivators aboard the surrounding spirit boats had clearly been stationed here to guard them. With a brief glance, he estimated their number to be no less than 2,000 to 3,000. To avoid drawing attention, he refrained from extending his spiritual sense to probe them further. Even so, he was certain that nascent soul cultivators were among their ranks. As for whether the sect master of the myriad gates of enlightenment was present, that was a matter only the heavens could answer. There were, after all, 108 Windfire pillars in total. Surely it couldn't be such a coincidence that one Tianming would be stationed near these particular 3. If that man truly happened to be nearby and chose to intervene, Han Li was not entirely certain whether it would spell misfortune for himself or for one Tianming. The heavenly Windfire formation was renowned for its overwhelming might. Yet from what Han Li knew, it had been devised to besiege entire sects. Against large numbers of mid- and low-grade cultivators, it was devastating. But when faced with a single high-grade cultivator, its effectiveness was far less absolute. At his current level of power, slipping past this formation would be troublesome at worst, certainly not impossible. There was no chance it could truly confine him. Han Li hovered silently in mid-air, hesitating for a long moment. Then his gaze shifted toward a distant direction. Without another glance at the spirit boats or the towering pillars before him, he turned and drifted toward the vast veil of azure and crimson light. At the foot of one of the pillars, a massive 3-story ship floated upon the ocean's surface. Its entire structure had been carved from exquisite green jade, its polished surfaces gleaming with an almost otherworldly beauty. On the highest deck, several cultivators sat gathered around a square jade table, conversing leisurely. Plates of rare spirit fruits were laid out before them, their expressions relaxed, even carefree, as though the siege unfolding around them were of little consequence. A white-robed scholar turned toward the elderly man seated opposite him, smiling faintly. "Senior Long, I've heard that if we succeed in conquering the Star Palace this time, Coalition Leader 1 intends to grant your Golden Lotus sect one of the 3 spirit islands of the myriad gates of Enlightenment Heavenly Fortune Island. Is that true?" The elderly man cast him a sidelong glance, a hint of sharpness in his eyes. "You are well informed, Nephew Ning. Fellow Taoist One did indeed make such a promise. The spirit vein on Heavenly Fortune Island surpasses the one I currently reside upon. Relocating there will greatly benefit my sect's future." A grey-robed, middle-aged Taoist priest chuckled softly. "Indeed, Heavenly Fortune Island is renowned throughout the scattered star seas for the purity of its spirit vein. Combined with the abundance of rare spirit herbs found there, your Golden Lotus sect will surely rise to new heights after the move." "Speak for yourself, fellow Taoist," Hua the elderly man replied with a faint smile. "Were you not also granted a dozen rare materials? Otherwise, why would a reclusive old monster like you come out of hiding to assist Brother One?" Among the 3, too, were early nascent soul cultivators. The white-robed scholar was only at late core formation, yet his demeanor was neither deferential nor arrogant, clearly marking him as someone far from ordinary. The Taoist priest smiled, about to respond, when suddenly a low resonant hum echoed from the nearby Windfire pillar. The streams of azure and crimson light trembled violently as though struck by an unseen force. Someone is attempting to breach the formation, the Taoist priest exclaimed, rising abruptly to his feet. The elderly man and the scholar followed suit, their gazes snapping toward the pillar. The Taoist priest swiftly summoned a formation plate, forming a series of hand seals before pointing repeatedly. Southwest direction. Wait, this isn't someone escaping. Someone is trying to enter. Those guards are utterly useless. Azure light flared around the elderly man as a jade carriage materialized beside him. A sinister smile tugged at his lips. Come, fellow Taoist Hua. Anyone capable of bypassing the guards and daring to challenge the heavenly Windfire formation is no ordinary cultivator, and this location is not far from the disturbance. With the formation suppressing him, there's no way he can break through immediately. I'll leave it in your hands, Brother Long, the Taoist priest replied without hesitation as he stepped into the carriage. With a swift incantation, the elderly man activated the carriage. It was instantly enveloped in a sphere of azure light before vanishing into the surrounding veil of wind and fire, merging seamlessly with the formation itself. Within the roiling currents of red and azure light, the jade carriage streaked forward at astonishing speed, unimpeded. The Taoist priest stroked his beard, clearly impressed. Remarkable. I had heard of your heavenly wind carriage, but I never imagined it would exhibit such power within this formation. It seems Brother One was well aware of its capabilities when assigning you to guard this location. Perhaps the elderly man replied lightly. Though ever since fellow Taoist One advanced to the late nascent soul stage, his thoughts have grown increasingly difficult to fathom. The Taoist priest smiled faintly but said nothing. The carriage sped onward faster than even a typical mid-nascent soul cultivator could travel. Guided by the formation plate, they traversed several dozen kilometers in mere moments. Be cautious, the elderly man said suddenly, his expression turning grave. The intruder is just ahead. They have already broken through most of the formation's restraints and are about to escape the wind and fire entirely. This person must be extremely powerful. Without waiting for a reply, he formed a hand seal and began chanting. Brilliant azure light erupted, rendering both the carriage and its occupants hazy and indistinct before they vanished completely. They had concealed themselves. From the shadows they would observe, then decide whether to strike or withdraw. The Taoist priest nodded in approval. Neither of them extended their spiritual sense. The carriage rose higher into the air, slowing as it approached. Moments later they caught sight of the intruder. Both of them froze in astonishment. The figure before them appeared absurdly young, a man no older than his 20s. He had summoned no treasures, relying only on a thin layer of azure light surrounding his body. Yet he moved through the violent currents of wind and fire with effortless ease, as though strolling through a quiet garden. Who is he? Could he be a mid-nascent soul cultivator? The elderly man whispered, shock flickering in his eyes. Had other high-grade cultivators of the Starfall Coalition been present, they would have recognized Han Li instantly. His portrait had long since spread across the scattered star seas following the Heaven Void Cauldron incident. Time meant little to cultivators, their memories were sharp, enduring. But these two were outsiders, reclusive figures drawn out only by Wan Tianming's generous rewards. They knew little of the wider world. Thus they failed to recognize him. Even so, fear did not take hold. Together they could contend even with a mid-nascent soul cultivator. And there was no certainty that this young man had reached that level. Exchanging a glance, they chose not to retreat. Instead, they pressed forward, trusting in the carriage's concealment. When they hovered silently some 300 feet above Han Li, they studied him carefully. Plain features, a simple azure robe. Nothing remarkable, save for the storage pouches and spirit beast pouch at his waist. Nothing revealed his origin. The elderly man frowned, glancing toward the Taoist priest. The priest hesitated only briefly before nodding. In unison, they reached for their storage pouches, drawing in a steady breath as they prepared to unleash a devastating surprise attack. But at that very moment, Hanley suddenly looked up and smiled. White and azure wings unfurled behind him, and with a single gentle beat, he vanished. The two cultivators were instantly alarmed. Without hesitation, the elderly man abandoned the ambush. He stomped down upon the jade carriage, pouring his magic power into it in a frantic surge. The concealment shattered. A brilliant sphere of azure light erupted, enveloping both cultivators and the carriage. At the same time, the Taoist priest swiftly produced a black-and-white yin-yang mirror from his storage pouch and cast it into the air,